Alrighty guys, in this video I want to take you through a few simple bits and pieces that you could do at home when it comes time to taking your pride and joy out in the bush, or even just going on a highway trip somewhere, like such as a holiday. This video should be able to cover those two main things. I have done previously some post-trip videos you need to do when it comes time to washing your pride and joy. I've also done some pre-trip videos on setting up for camping and what you need to bring, or what you should bring, I should say. So this video is pretty much going to cover the actual vehicle, what you should I recommend you should do when it comes time to taking your rig away from home. So number one on the list, main thing, is suspension. Now, if you're IFS like me, like a modern dual cab, unless you're a 79, you're gonna have a lot of ball joints. You're gonna have a lot of bushings that you need to make sure are good and healthy. Now, if you're older vehicle, you might have solid axle. So just once again, check those bushies. Check those ball joints. You would have less ball joints, but you would have a little bit more bushings, if that makes sense. So make sure, just have a look, make sure that nothing's out of the place, make sure nothing's loose, and if you have a pry bar, just use a pry bar and pry against any bushings, such as your upper control arm. Just make sure nothing's making any noise. If so, you might want to have a look at that. Another thing to check out is grease. Making sure you grease your suspension. If it's a non-greasable part, that's fine, don't need to worry about it. But if it's got any sort of grease nipple, you're going to want to make sure that you grease that up for a trip. I recommend using New Holland's four-wheel drive grease. If you're four-wheel drive, what your car recommends. Generally, most cars recommend NLG2, if I'm not mistaken. I could have gotten that wrong, but just make sure you double check, and it's, from my understanding, it should be lithium based. Another thing you should check is bolts and nuts. Now, any camping trip, any four-wheel drive trip, especially if it's for quite a while and if it's quite intense, you're gonna want to make sure that you tighten, or even just make sure everything's tight under there. Even just getting an old torque wrench and just double checking everything, making sure everything's tight, especially if you have leaf springs at the back, making sure those U-bolts are nice and tight, especially if you only just replaced them. You should replace, if you have replaced them every 500, after 500 Ks, the first 500, you're going to want to re-torque them. I'm sure you probably are aware of that, but that's something to check out. As well as, speaking of grease again, making sure those rear leaf spring shackles are nice and greased up, if they are greasable once again. While we're talking in regards to near the suspension area, is your tyres. Making sure your tyres are nice and good in regards to tread and tyre pressures. Even doing a tyre rotation before your trip, that could get the most life out of your tyres. But just have a quick look, making sure that they're nice and even. Hey, you could even be up for a wheel alignment, making sure you check that. But just make sure all your tyres are still good and they're full of PSI. Even your spare tyre. Last thing you want on a trip is going to check your spare tyre. If you've blown one of your main tyres and realising it's got no air. It's alright if you have an air compressor, but it's just one less thing to worry about and one less thing to do, especially if you're in a panic and you just want to get the tyre replaced and keep on chugging along. Next thing, undercarriage. Once again, we're going to be talking about grease a lot, because grease is very important on a four-wheel drive. You want to make sure that grease is there. So undercarriage, once again, making sure your tail shaft, if it is a greasable component, making sure that is greased up, ready to rock and roll. I find with grease, the best thing to do with them is making sure that you pump it you do as many pumps until it starts making that crackle noise. That's how you know you got your most, if not all of the air out. So that's a good telltale sign. See, on the undercarriage, you want to make sure there's no leaks. Is there any leaks? Anything loose? Especially your bash plates. Bash plates can get loose with time. Making sure they're nice and tight. Anything out of place, like, do you see any loose wiring just hanging? Just go over it, make sure that there's nothing leaking, nothing loose, and that everything is as it should be. Alrighty, if we pop over to the engine bay, we want to check some things. Number one, our engine oil. Engine oil is very vital. And if your engine oil is just about due, let's just say it's due in 1,000 Ks and you're doing a 2,000 kilometer trip, it might be best to do your oil change now. That way your engine is protected, it's lubricated, it's getting the right necessities from that engine oil. Now, coolant level. Coolant, once again, is very important. Check your radiator. If you just done a mud trip, you want to make sure that there's no dirt or anything in that radiator that's going to cause the engine to overheat. Your clutch fan. If you're running a clutch fan like me, make sure that it's still spinning well and that there's resistance. The hotter the engine is, the more resistance you want. So if you're checking while the engine is cold, it will have resistance, but it should, as soon as you let go, you should and slow down. If you spin the fan while it's cold and it's still spinning like there's no resistance, you might be out for a new clutch fan. Have a look at that. Another thing, making sure your clutch fan, your actual fan blades are in good condition. That's one important thing that you need to check. Make sure that there's no cracks and that it's all in good nick. Another thing to check is your brake fluid and clutch fluid. If you're a manual, sometimes your clutch fluid is together with your brake master cylinder. Have a look at that. But for an 80 series at least and a few other Toyotas, you got them separately, so double check that. Coming back to brake fluid, actually, making sure that your brake fluid is clean and that there's no water contamination, because that's something that can affect brake systems throughout the years if there's water contamination inside the brake fluid. If you're running a hydraulic power steering system, making sure that your hydraulic power steering is topped up and in decent condition. Washer fluid, wipers, making sure. We'll come back to wipers later on, but washer fluid is very important. How can you wash the bugs off your vehicle if you're doing a trip? Making sure that's working and topped up. If not, something you might want to consider sorting out. Any leaks, just going around the engine bay, making sure there's no leaks. Everything's all hunky-dory and that there's nothing that's gonna prevent the car from making the trip. And then your air filter. Something you might want to have a look at is your air filter. Making sure that's clean, ready to go. Especially if you go into the PDR. You want to have a nice clean filter from the get-go, and that way you're not suffocating your engine as much. One last thing I can recommend to use in the engine bay is your battery. Might be a good idea for you if you're doing a trip to check your battery. Any reputable auto parts store such as Autobarn, Supercheap, they can check it for free, and it's a no-brainer to just get your battery checked. And if it's just about dead, might be time to replace it. It's one less thing you have to worry about, especially if you're doing a trip, that if you go to start your car in the morning, it won't start. That could be a problem, especially if you don't have a jump starter. Might consider a jump starter. King sell them, Supercheap, anyone sells them, so it might be something good to invest into your kit for your vehicle. And then one of the other things I can recommend is your accessory belts, your serpentine belt, your belts overall, making sure they're there, still tight and in good condition. There's no frays, there's no cracks. Belt can still crack and you can still think it's good, but until you actually take it off and start pulling it and actually examine it up close, that's one of the things you need to look out for. And then One other thing, lights. Check your tail lights, check your headlights, check your aftermarket lights, making sure they all work. Last thing you want, especially if you're doing a night drive or even a night trip, is going to turn on your headlights and realizing they're all crap. Now, if you see one headlight that's out, good chance that the one next to it, or like the one on the other side, is going to go out. So it's better to replace them in pairs, I strongly recommend. Otherwise, you're just gonna be replacing lights after another. So it's better just to do it once, do it right, get it all sorted, in my opinion. And then I mentioned before, wipers. Making sure your wipers are still in good condition. Some telltale signs that your wipers are going out is if it's streaking, if it's making noise, and you just want to examine the wipers. If you see the blade actually separating from the actual blade assembly, obviously you're going to be needing them replaced, but sometimes they're a bit harder to find, so just make sure that it's still soft, still pliable, and like there's no cracks. And even if it is still all good and it's still streaking, that's also a telltale sign that it needs replacing. So just go to the auto parts store and get them replaced. One less thing to stress about, and especially if it's pissing down rain, it's one less thing, peace of mind is what I'm trying to say. Any bolt-ons are tight, so if you got a tray, making sure those tray bolts are still tight, they can come loose, especially the ones closest to the body, they can definitely come loose with time. So just make sure they're all nice and tight. Even your bull bar, making sure your bull bar's tight. Any mods that you have, making sure they're tight. Last thing you want on a trip, especially if you're going down to Cape York or something, I've seen it on Instagram plenty of times, going down, your roof rack just goes sliding right onto your bonnet. Now you cause damage and you got to try and get your roof rack back onto your roof. Just make sure it's tight from the get-go. Making sure even stuff that you add on, like what I mean by that is like if you got your roof rack and then you added your fishing rods, you're adding your camp boxes, all of that, just even make sure they're tight and regularly checking them. Especially if you got ratchet straps on it, just making sure every couple hundred Ks that you're doing, you just make sure they're tight. Same goes for if you got a tray and you got a ratchet strap over your swag and whatnot, just make sure they're tight. It's one less thing to worry about, and it gives you peace of mind while you're driving on the road that nothing's going to come loose that you haven't prevented from happening. Another thing to watch out for is your brakes. Making sure your brakes are still in good condition. Once again, mud trips, they're fun to do, but they're a pain and they cause damage to vehicles without you really knowing it. If you've done a bit of a mud drive, making sure your brake pads are still there and they still have decent meat left on them, because brake pads can easily wear out with mud. So just having a look, making sure that there's still plenty of meat left, and you'll be sorted. Even just check your rotors. If you feel a lip and if you feel any imperfections like deep grooves, or if you just feel it's uneven, then that could be a telltale sign that your brakes need working on. But just something to look out for. And then spares. Any spares that I would recommend is just your general stuff. So like whatever you might think you need. Plus some things I would recommend is belts, brake pads, if you're doing a long distance mud drive sort of thing. Spare fuel filter, oil filter, spare fluids, like just little things. It depends on the trip you're doing. I can't really recommend if I don't know what you're doing, but spare viscous fan, even spare fan blade depending. Like it's a bit hard, but like if you just if you get to know your rig and you identify what you think it needs, like hey, it's got a bit of a valve cover gasket leak, obviously you should get that replaced sooner than later. But if it's leaking and you're going on a trip, how about bring some extra oil? Bushings if you really want, alternator, spare alternator, like little bits and pieces like that, like just stuff you might need that you think you might need. First aid kit. Now, first aid kits are invaluable. First aid kits are everywhere. I got mine at King's. You can get them at King's, but they even make slimline ones that you can fit in backpacks, or even they make ones that you can go on your tray sort of thing. But they're pretty invaluable, and it's just peace of mind knowing that no matter what happens, you got stuff sorted for yourself. That's pretty much it. Hopefully this video was really helpful to use, and hopefully it gives you a bit of idea of what you might do on your next trip. Anyways guys, I'll see you in the next one. Peace out.